if it's the whole human race, but I think a lot of humans are really, really evil.
Welcome to the Our Hen House interview. This is Jasmine Singer.
This is Marianne Sullivan.
And in just a moment, we are going to be joined by the one and only Gail Eisnitz. Oh, I'm so excited. The chief investigator for the Humane Farming Association, author of the recently published memoir, Out of Sight, an undercover investigator's fight for animal rights and her own survival. And of course, you know, the iconic Slaughterhouse, the shocking story of greed, neglect, and inhumane treatment inside the U.S. meat industry. And also, she's the driving force behind so many news stories on the horrors of factory farming in the Washington Post, the New York Times, my goodness, Good Morning America, ABC's Primetime Live, so many others. Gail is a recipient of the Albert Schweitzer Medal for Outstanding Achievement in Animal Welfare. And I'm so excited about this interview. But before we get to Gail, just a quick reminder that we're a podcast and a YouTube. A YouTube.
Whatever.
We're a podcast and a YouTube. And we're on YouTube. So make sure you hit like and subscribe wherever you can. Thank you in advance for that. Gail, welcome to our hen house.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm so thrilled to be with you.
Oh my gosh, I have been talking about your book, the first one, since the second I learned about it more than 20 years ago. And I think that the same is true for like everyone here right now, the flock who's here in person, the listeners who are tuning in, the viewers on the YouTube. It's just, I mean, it's game changing. And it was just so incredible to learn about your new book and have this opportunity to catch up with you. So tell us a bit of the story of how you became involved in investigating farmed animal issues, really at a point where even most of the animal protection movement was largely ignoring what was happening to them.
I was investigating all sorts of animals, and then I received a complaint from a whistleblower down in Florida at a slaughterhouse. And he was a USDA employee, and he said that the cattle there, where he was taking blood samples from them for brucellosis testing, they were supposed to be dead at that point, but they weren't. They were fully conscious and they're having their heads skinned. And he was very upset. He was upset for the workers who were put in grave danger. And he was very, very upset for the poor cows. So he wrote an anonymous letter, although he did put his return address on the envelope. So that helps. And and he contacted all of his supervisors at USDA. He contacted his congressman. He contacted the Veterans Administration because he was a veteran. And then he contacted a bunch of animal groups. And mine was the only response he got. So that's how I got involved. I went down to Florida, where the slaughterhouse was the largest cattle slaughterhouse in the southeastern United States. And I went down and I investigated and I corroborated his claims with great detail. And he was then fired for whistleblowing. And we sued the government under the Whistleblower Protection Act and won him his job back. But one of the things that was required under the Whistleblower Protection Act was that the USDA then had to do an investigation of his claims. And before they released the report, which was released by the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, the slaughterhouse, which had plans to expand, went out of business for good. And then the report was released, and it said it was a wonderful slaughterhouse. It was a glowing report. It couldn't have been a better slaughterhouse. So that's how I got started. And that's
Wow.
Set me off on my journey to see what was going on in the rest of the country.
Yeah, I'm not sure for everybody that would have been a start. I think for most people it would have been an end. They would have like the frustrations there, the despair there, just the horror that you confronted. So the fact that that was the thing that inspired you to spend your life doing this incredibly hard work is so inspiring. And it's one of the things that really made me glad that your latest book isn't just an update to Slaughterhouse. It's really a personal memoir as well. And very movingly, you both open and close with the story of that person who contacted you and who was such an important part of your story. But why? So when you were thinking about it, and you decided to write another book. Why did you decide to write it as a memoir?
My first book was just a basic nonfiction book about slaughterhouses. And I thought I had a story to tell about my life. I suffer from a rare and debilitating visual processing problem, and I hadn't gotten to the bottom of it when I decided to write the book. But I had seen many, many doctors who all told me that I was fine. And this visual processing disorder is very unusual. And I wanted to tell the story of what it was like to endure the visual processing problem while I was doing these investigations. And fortunately, the disorder was ultimately established in the scientific literature as a medical problem about 10 years ago. So then I found out what it was. I found out 3 years ago. And to this day, most doctors have never heard of it. But those two stories really went hand in hand, the story of my fight to find out what was wrong with me and my fight to expose slaughterhouse and factory farm violations. So that's why I did it for a good reason, which was I wanted to get to the mainstream public. I didn't want to just tell the atrocities that were going on. I wanted to write something that people say it reads like a detective story and they can't put it down. And that's very encouraging because that was the whole point.
People like to read stories about people. It's hard to write stories just about animals, especially animals who are suffering. Your story was so engaging, and you really did read it was very compelling to keep going and finding out the next doctor and what they said, and people not believing you, so I think it really did work as a vehicle to tell the stories of what the animals were going through. I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you, Jasmine.
Do you mind sharing the name of the diagnosis, Gail?
I don't want to because that comes at the crux of the book. It's like you finally find out what it is.
Right. Yeah, let's make sure people get a couple copies of this, one for yourself and one to give away. You mentioned a few times about your habit of repressing your feelings about the horrors that you were confronting and how that was probably not so great for your health, both mentally and physically. At the same time, do you think that might have been key to your ability to keep going?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If I had been in touch with my feelings, I don't think I could have done the work, but by suppressing them, it enabled me to keep moving on. And that's changed a lot over the years too, with just getting a little bit older and working a spiritual program and learning about myself and getting a diagnosis. I have come to have some compassion for myself because the visual processing problem I was told didn't exist. And so I started to blame myself for it. As you read in the book, my mantra was, why am I doing this to myself? So I was really, really, really hard on myself. And now I'm not. So it's just great. I feel like I'm on vacation from myself.
But it is kind of extraordinary that you probably wouldn't have been able to do a lot of this if you weren't in a state of repressed emotions, which is Like, how telling is that of like what an insane world we live in, that just knowing about what happens to animals is emotional, so emotionally destructive, and you almost have to. I mean, what you were doing to yourself was in some ways harmful to yourself, but you had to do it in order to in order to do this investigative work.
Right. I did. I think it also came out. I said in my first book that I shared with a colleague that I was so stressed out that the animals having their heads skinned while they were still fully conscious was the tip of the iceberg. And I said to my colleague, when I found out about all the other things that were happening, and I had a supervisor at the time at another organization who wouldn't let me expose the violations, I said to my colleague, I'm so stressed out, it'll be amazing if I don't get breast cancer. And 6 months
Wow.
later, I had it. So that's repressed. That's from repressed feelings too, I think.
Hmm. Wow, that's really intense. Yeah, you have really grown by leaps and bounds, and as has your work. And I think that's one of the things that's so profound about this book. So much of what you discovered about what was happening in slaughterhouses was because of the willingness of workers to talk about it, even sometimes recounting their own brutality to the animals. Was that surprising?
It was surprising. I worked a lot with unions, so the unions put me in touch with workers, and they felt some of the workers were union members, and they felt protected by the union and speaking with me. But when they started talking to me about what they were required to do, it was like the floodgates had burst open, and they just told me every detail of every horrific thing they were doing.
Why do you think they shared that?
One of the workers who wasn't protected by the union said he wanted to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. I don't know. I guess that they hated doing this. It's that the line speeds in the slaughter plants and what's going on in factory farms is just so crazy that they're required to do these terrible things, and they don't want to do them. They don't want to try to cut the throats of live threshing hogs before they go into the scalding tank alive. They hated that, but they were required to do that by management. So they were happy to be able to talk about it.
Hmm.
It is extra. I can imagine. I mean, when you use that expression floodgates, I can just imagine, like, because it's not the kind of thing you can talk about when you get home. Your partner, your kids don't want to know that you were doing that today. Nobody wants to know. You can't talk about it at the bar. You can't talk about it anywhere. It's probably very shameful in a lot of ways, even though, I'm sure there are many excuses and valid excuses for why people have to do it. So I can understand, like, once it started coming out, it just poured out, finally being able to have somebody hear this story. It's so awful what we do to the people, and is not close to what we do to the animals, but it's pretty horrible.
And when they did speak out, some of them were so courageous. They went on camera with their faces showing to talk about this. But every time they went on camera to do this, the networks decided it was too disgusting for viewers, and the viewers would change the channel, so it never aired. But that's how courageous they were, that they actually didn't try to protect their identity or anything. They just wanted to tell America what was going on behind the closed doors of slaughterhouses and factory farms.
Yeah, can you expand on that a little bit? Because a lot of what you went through was not only gathering this information, but the unbelievable frustration of getting media to pay attention. Can you talk a little, just expand on what it was like going to newspapers or TV stations? And you did get some really impressive press, but so many stories, I think, went untold.
Right. I mean, 60 Minutes was not only scheduled to come out in the field and interview the workers on camera, but Mike Wallace, when he was alive back then, was actually coming out the next day, and his producer, who didn't really want to do the story to begin with because he thought it was too disgusting, and his executive producer had warned him against doing it, decided at the last minute not to do the story because there was a union dispute, a contract dispute, and he thought that might be at the bottom of the problem. And so they pulled the plug on that, and 2020 was going to do it, and Primetime Live was going to do it, and Dateline actually went out to Washington State to interview the workers who had been skinning cows completely. They were not only skinned, but they had some of their legs cut off, and they were still vocalizing and struggling. And these workers, we had the attorney that we hired to represent them there. These workers went on camera on Dateline, and the whole thing was all done, and I was so thrilled. And then Dateline pulled the plug.
Wow.
So yeah. But HBO did a great job on a story that we did in Ohio, where pigs on a factory farm, all breeding sows that were no longer productive, that had spent their lives inside gestation crates, were eventually no longer productive and maybe injured or wounded. They would kick them out of the barn and hotshot them out of the barn, drag them out of the barn because they couldn't walk any longer, throw them over a 4-foot ledge onto a pile in the freezing cold of other sows, and have them watch as their fellow sows had chain fastened around their neck. The chain was hitched to the top of a front end loader, the tines of a front end loader, and the front end loader tines were lifted, and the sows struggled for 5 minutes until they finally suffocated under their own weight. And HBO did a big documentary on that, which was wonderful. It was called Death on a Factory Farm.
Yeah.
And it aired 19 times in 1 month. And then it kept airing for months after that. So it was really, really great. So we've had quite a few successes.
Yeah. Yeah. But the successes, I think, that one in particular I remember, but others as well, frequently came after law enforcement failed. I mean, I think that your frustrations in going to media seems like just pales in comparison to the frustrations in going to law enforcement. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, we went to local prosecutors, but we mostly ditched local prosecutors because they were not interested at all in prosecuting cases. So we prepared open and shut cases for attorneys general in 6 different states where animals were being absolutely brutalized in violation of the law on factory farms and in slaughterhouses. And those attorneys general, we prepared cases. One case, we always sent them video, still photos, testimony, worker testimony, affidavits. In one case, we sent 800 pages of testimony to the Attorney General in South Dakota. And they invariably just blew us off because they're so busy protecting big ag that they don't want anything to do with prosecuting a factory farm or a slaughterhouse. And in the case of Washington State, it was a big slaughterhouse, and the governor got involved. He established a task force to look into the problem with the state police and the attorney general and the local prosecutor and everybody. And it was such a cover-up of epic proportion because in the end, they decided that Humane Farming Association, that was me, manufactured the evidence orchestrated it for fundraising purposes. And it was just like, I practically dissolved when I heard that.
Wow. Yeah. Ugh. How much has changed? Like, how has the slaughter industry changed in recent years? And how has it remained the same? I'm I'm scared of the answer.
I mean, thousands of small to mid-sized slaughterhouses have been forced out of business by these giant mega slaughterhouses. So the result is production line speeds have increased dramatically. And just to give you an example, I guess it's about 1,106 hogs are killed per line per hour, have been until now. And I've always been saying we need to slow line speeds because that's one hog every 3 seconds. That's always been my thing that I've focused on. We need to slow line speeds. I mean, we need to not eat meat, but we need to slow line speeds. So what did they do? The new administration has increased line speeds for hogs. In fact, they took the cap off the line speeds, and now they said you can slaughter hogs as fast as you want to. And chickens that aren't covered by the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act, they are eviscerated at a rate of 140 birds per minute. And that has just changed to 175 birds per minute. That's 3 birds a second. So enforcement, as a result of the front page story we got in the Washington Post, which resulted in funding for the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act, which had been on the books for 43 years but had never had a dime put toward it. So enforcement has been increased in terms of what they call verification procedures, which I call spot checks. Inspectors that are supposed to enforce the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act just go into the area to see what's going on, and everything changes when they come into the area. But the bottom line is whether they're doing spot checks, which I always said they should have full-time inspectors stationed in the kill areas of the plants. But whether they're doing spot checks or not, they're spending less than 3% of the entire federal meat inspection budget on humane slaughter enforcement. On the animals that fuel the whole system, they spend about 2.5% of those dollars on that.
So, Gail, given what you've been through, like we all know some of this stuff, bits of it, but you lived it and you were immersed in it. And you were mentioning before that you've come to a new place where you're taking care of yourself, that you're more connected, I think. If that was the word that you used. But how do you feel about humans? What's your evaluation of the human race?
Well, from what I know, what I've listened to, the 3 million hours of testimony from workers on the kill floor who invariably said that they observed or engaged in beating, strangling, scalding, dismembering, and skinning live animals. My opinion of the human race, I don't know if it's the whole human race, but I think a lot of humans are really, really evil.
You are definitely preaching to the choir there. But I'm curious, you said that you have a spiritual practice that you're involved in, and you've certainly had a lot of personal evolution. Do you find hope in the middle of all of the mayhem? I mean, I'm not trying to angle the question. I guess what I'm asking is, what makes you continue on? Is what makes you continue on the fact that like not doing it is not an option, or is it for some, deeper reason as well? Maybe I'm not asking this question in the most eloquent way, but go for it, Gail.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, no, I think the answer is I'm naive. I'm naive. I do have hope. I've always had hope. Every time I try something, every time I send 800 pages to an attorney general, I'm like, yes, we're going to get this. And then it doesn't work. But I just keep hoping, and I keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing the next right thing. And it's sort of worked. I mean, when I look back, I don't regret what I've done because we've had some major successes. So, but it's hard to have hope in the face of all this gloom and doom, but I'm basically an optimistic person, so I guess I do have hope.
It
So
reminds me of like auditioning, which I'm an actor, and so I feel like the stat was something like for every 100 auditions you go on, you get 2 callbacks, and I just tend to approach everything like a numbers game. I'm not sure if that's hope or naivete or just math, but I don't know. That's what it made me think of.
Right.
I think that humans are oddly optimistic. Like we always think things are better than they are, and which is, good, except for things like climate change, because we tend to think it's really not that bad. But what else are you going to do? I mean, that's what I always say. What else are you going to do? And especially with the amount of courage you showed, I'm wondering whether I don't think, I'm not going to stick with the hope thing because I never know how to talk about hope. But I'd like to go back a little bit and talk about media because a lot of the exposés that you mentioned were throughout, kind of not old media, it still exists, but the older type of media where there were more gatekeepers. And you mentioned that, they decided it was too gory or they decided that you were making it up or whatever. And what are some of the differences in getting stories out there between when there were these gatekeepers who could just say no, and now we're we have social media, so you can post anything, but it's harder to get a big audience. Like, are there pluses and minuses there?
Yeah, I think it's really hard now. I was surprised. I just thought that my book was going to get out there in the media and people were going to learn about this stuff the way Slaughterhouse did. But it's a different world now. It's like you have to have Instagram, and I don't know, the media is less approachable. It's really hard to get media. Podcasts like yours are wonderful. Thank goodness for podcasts like yours.
Thank you.
It's really hard. I mean, I had this great story that I pitched to the Washington Post about hogs freezing in sub-zero temperatures in transport. And she was really interested in doing the story. And I had a former USDA veterinarian working with me on it. And he worked at one of the biggest hog kills in the country. And because they, as you know from reading my book, they freeze frozen solid, some of them, and they have to be thawed apart with hot water hose just to chainsaw them, put them down the rendering hole. So I had this great story, and she was all excited that the USDA inspector was going to help expose it, and USDA veterinarian. And then she ghosted me. I never heard from her again. Same thing with NPR. They were really interested enough to request a copy of my new book. Really interested, exclamation points in their request and everything. I was really excited. And then ghosted. So,
Well, do you think that it's people in charge, like you ran into in other stories, like somebody higher up says this is too ugly or this is too sad or something? Do you think that's what's happening?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the editors at the Washington Post were gung-ho about that freezing hog story. I just don't even know what happened.
Well, do you think it's the
Don't know.
power of the industry? Do you think
Yes.
they have influence?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah, a billion percent. But it's inexplicable. It is. And one of our flock members, Elizabeth, just commented, and now platforms like YouTube are restricting footage of animal abuse exposés too. It's harder to get the word out. It's true. There's a lot that we're running up against. But like I said, I think it's a numbers game. And I realize that from where you sit, you're looking largely at the things that didn't get out there, but I'm looking at what you have accomplished and the things that have gotten out there, and impressive. It undoubtedly came as a result of like thousands and thousands of pitches, like not 10. It's like when someone is called an overnight success and then you look at their life and they like went to Juilliard 15 years ago or something and like have been pounding the pavement, but now they're an overnight success. I know that you've been working on this and working on it, but you do manage to break through anyway. And one thing that I wanted to ask you about is the fact that a theme running through your book and the many, many investigations you have undertaken is the complete failure of the law to regulate what we do to farmed animals. Do you see any possibility of that shifting, or do you think that change is going to have to come through other means and not through litigation or legislation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are virtually no laws protecting animals inside factory farms. So there's that, unless you use the anti-cruelty statute, but you can't get in the farm to use the anti-cruelty statute. I mean, there's no one in there to enforce it. So, and as far as the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act, getting that enforced, big deal. They get a little slap on the wrist if they do something bad. I mean, there haven't been any penalties for that except for stopping the line for a short period of time. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm not really sure.
Marianne, what do you think as the animal law expert in the room?
There are a lot of people. I mean, this is the whole project of animal law is confronting the reality, which Gail just laid out, that cruelty laws may apply, but they're not enforced in any way whatsoever. And other statutes like the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act, individuals can't enforce that. It's up to the government. So what are you going to do? But there are a lot of lawyers who are just trying to get around this whole like block that animals don't have any way of getting into court. I like to look at those cases and I like to think that there's hope there. I think one of the things that's happening is the work of Direct Action Everywhere, where they're putting their investigators at actual risk of being arrested and then trying to get the word out through the trials of the humans. I mean, that's a high risk strategy because people end up going to prison. But that is their strategy. They're not fooling about it. There's some other people doing some interesting work. Legal Impact for Chickens is just one of the possibility of going after Alexander Farms under a cruelty statute. I can't remember their theory. They came up with some real, off the top of my head, really interesting theory under the particular state's law of how they can get it to court instead of leaving it up to the DA. So there are lawyers who are trying to overcome this huge failure of the law. And I always remind people that years and years ago, my friend David Wolfson wrote an article and about farm, before I knew anything about what was happening with farm animals. And the title of the article was Beyond the Law, because they are literally beyond the law. The law doesn't have any way to reach them. But lawyers are kind of trying to find interesting ways forward. Like, other things are like consumer protection law. When they lie about what they're doing to animals, they can be sued. You don't get that much if you win those cases. All you get is for them to stop lying and maybe some money. But still, it's a way to bring attention. All of these are just like, it's ridiculous. There's just like these tortured ways of getting around the legal reality, which is just an embarrassment. I mean, we have laws saying that it is a crime to cause an animal to suffer unnecessarily. I mean, that's a law in every state in this country. And look at what you've seen, Gail. I mean, look at what you've seen. There are animals suffering. There are animals being caused horrific pain everywhere all the time. It's completely and totally unnecessary. And yet it goes on. So the law's, kind of a joke, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to use it to the maximum extent we possibly can.
We do litigate a lot. In fact, we were really, really successful on the Rosebud Reservation, where a big factory farm was being put on tribal lands, and the tribe thought they wanted it until we convinced them otherwise. But we used NEPA to stop construction of what was going to be an operation that was producing 1 million pigs a year. So that was really successful.
Yeah. And NEPA, just to remind people, is the statute that requires you to do an environmental impact statement, which I assume they hadn't bothered to do in spite of putting 1 million hogs onto land. Why would that have an impact on the environment?
And another example is in the hanging sows, where they're using the chain to hang the sows to suffocate them. That's a really interesting example. We did have a good prosecutor. That was like the first time we convinced somebody to prosecute a case, and he was very, very supportive. But unfortunately, the judge was a farmer.
Yeah,
so
that's the kind of, I mean, it's rural, what state was that in? I forget. That wasn't
That was
South
in
Dakota.
Ohio.
Okay.
Ohio.
Rural areas where hogs are raised, like who's going to be in the positions of power? It's going to be the people who own those factories.
Right. But I noticed that Animal Partisan has a petition before USDA that would enable us to use state anti-cruelty statutes inside slaughterhouses. So that's a great thing.
Yeah, Will Lowry, who runs Animal Partisan, I love their work. And that's really one of his particular causes, is trying to, like, because every cruelty law is a little different, because all the states have different cruelty criminal laws, trying to find, like, different wording in different laws, cruelty laws, that will allow him to bring those lawsuits. I really love the work he's doing.
Yeah, HFA, Humane Farming Association, is working with him on that incredible case in Wisconsin where Pure Prairie Poultry decided to go out of business and stop feeding 1.6 million chickens. So we're working with him on that case because that's clearly in violation of the abandonment and nourishment statutes. And so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, that sounds like very exciting work. And he's a great lawyer, so that sounds very promising.
As we start to close, Gail, before I know we're going to also do a Q&A with our flock, which I'm looking forward to, but as we start to close, you know, I'm endlessly fascinated by the power of a book. And I'm just curious, with this one, was there anything surprising to you in the process of putting it together?
The only surprising thing was that nobody wanted to publish it, especially the animal publisher that everybody talks about would not touch this book. And then I finally found a publisher that's anti-censorship, and it's a great publisher. It's very well known.
Skyhorse is a great publisher.
Yeah. And so it took me 100 queries to get the book out there.
That's not so bad. I mean, I work in the book industry, and like 100 queries and winding up with a book from Skyhorse is great. I feel like I need to be in your life on a consistent basis to like show you the glass half full stuff. Like, I think what you're getting out there is phenomenal. And, you know, it's okay. Wait, bear with this story, okay? I'm a little loopy today, so I'm sorry, Marianne. I can already anticipate your...
I didn't say anything.
All right. My friend has a habit of staying with guys who she's dating for too long, and in some cases, years and years and years, and she's unhappy in the relationship. And so she started seeing this guy, and she was like 2 months in, and she was like, this isn't working. And you know, we talked about it, and she wound up breaking up with him. And we were texting before, and I was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you did it. You like ended this pattern that you have. And she was like, I feel so disappointed in myself because I feel like I should have never had a second date. And it was like, dude, you know, like, you're with the last dope for 4 years, and this was just 2 months. And so maybe despite the fact that I am curmudgeonly, it's in my constitution to be curmudgeonly and jaded. I do think that one of the things I can offer to activists who've been doing this forever is, or people who are dating the wrong guy or woman, is a kind of reality check that, like, Gail, I'm so unbelievably blown away by the work that you do. And I remember getting involved in the animal protection movement more than 20 years ago. And your first book was, I don't think there is any other book that I have so consistently recommended. I mean, back then there weren't like a ton of things to recommend. I mean, there were, but like in a way, comparatively, there weren't. And it really held up. I mean, it was game changing, but it still is. And when we heard about this sequel, or for lack of a better word, it was honestly just so heartening to know that you're still putting work out there in this particular way, in terms of like hard copy books, which I think will always be magical. It will always be, in my opinion, it will always be a dying industry, but it will never be a dead industry. And hopefully the factory farming world will become a dead industry. So all of that to say, if you were to come back on Our Hen House in 5 years with another book, what would you ideally want that book to be? Ideally, like pie in the sky, reality can suck it for a minute. What is your ideal book?
Oh my goodness. That's not going to happen. I'm booked out.
You're booked out. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, well then what would you want to be on Our Hen House for in 5 years? Like do you want to sing a song? Like what would be the most amazing reason to come back? Is it to celebrate the end of animal exploitation? Like what would it be?
Yeah, I think it would be to talk more about litigation and how litigation is helping us in the movement, and giving examples of it, because hopefully it will help us more and more. We work constantly with some really great attorneys, really great animal attorneys. And I think litigation may be the wave of the future when it comes to making progress in the animal protection movement.
I love it. I'm down for that. I think that's a really hopeful note to end on, and something tangible that we can really grab onto. So, Gail, just please reiterate the name of your book and how people can get it.
It's called Out of Sight. Let me see what it's actually called. Out of Sight, an undercover investigator's fight for animal rights and her own survival. You can get it at Amazon, most bookstores, I would think. At least you could order it, but it's definitely available on most big booksellers. And my message is, please share the book, because it was written as a memoir to get this information out to the mainstream public. And I think it really can. So in a very self-serving way.
It's not self-serving at all. I mean, I think that's the opposite of what it is. And I will say too, I've always been intrigued by the idea that for people who have like birthdays coming up, or there's holidays coming up, like asking your friends and family, like, instead of a birthday gift, I want you to watch this film or read this book. Like, I think that could be a way to ask people to opt in for reading this. And I would encourage people, as I said earlier, to get 2 copies. Don't forget, so that you could keep one and give one away. Don't forget to leave a review for Gail's book, because that really does help tremendously. Even if you don't buy it on Amazon, leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads. And yeah, Marianne, did you want to add anything before we close?
Well, I mean, I don't know whether there are other people on the call or are listening who have read the book, but I have read the book and I highly recommend it to anyone. Incredibly informative. Harrowing. I'm not going to deny it. It's harrowing both on a personal level and, of course, how can you write about what Gail has done without some difficult stories? But it moves along so quickly that it becomes bearable, and you learn so much reading it.
Yeah.
This will be self-serving, if you don't mind me just saying this. There was a review on Amazon the other day from somebody who I know who's a screenwriter in Hollywood, and she said, this is just to paint the picture. She said, find this book. This book reads mostly as a thriller, a suspenseful medical mystery woven into the heroic tale of Gail Eisnitz. And she says a bunch of other stuff, and then she says, warning, you will not be able to set her life story down. So I just say that because I want people to read the book to know that it's not just a litany of horrors.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Well, Gail, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Don't go anywhere because we want to do a Q&A with our flock for our bonus content. But you are just such a hero, and even more so now that I've gotten to chat with you. That's self-serving indeed, because I'm tickled pink. If you're listening to this, thank you. If you're watching this, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcatcher and or on YouTube. We'll talk to you next time.